Good morning, NWNA members. John Bashaw here, the president of the NWNA. I'm at the Lee County Justice Center, and this morning we're going to do a video, an interview on a really important free service that's available to members of the NWNA and residents of Lee County who own property. I'm here with Kevin Karnes, the Lee County Clerk of Courts and Comptroller, and we're going to talk about property fraud and management alerts. That is, if you become the victim of a potential property fraud or mortgage fraud problem, I'll call it a problem, there is a free service that's available to you to become alerted of that. So, Kevin, I really appreciate you giving me your time today to do this.
Absolutely, John.
What I'd like to start with, could you please explain your roles, your responsibilities, and what you do for the residents of Lee County?
Thank you, John, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk about property fraud today. The Clerk and Comptroller's office has a really important role in our community. We're an unbiased, neutral part of government. Our job is to save taxpayers money, hold local government accountable, and we're in possession of all the records. Part of our records are property related, like deeds and mortgages, and marriage licenses. All of those things are relating to property ownership. So we record those documents and hold them in perpetuity, so as property is being sold and transferred in our community, those records are not tampered with and always available to our citizens.
Great, thank you. Could you please explain how pervasive property and mortgage fraud is in Lee County or in the United States or in Florida? Just to put into perspective how serious a problem this is.
Yeah, it's actually a growing trend in our community. According to the FBI, we're the number 5 area in the nation for this type of fraud. Number 5. And I suspect that's because of how our community is structured. Cape Coral was built on plots of land, and that's around 150,000 plots of land. And Lehigh Acres has 88,000 plots of land. So I think we're unique in how our county is constructed, which is how this fraud happens. And so most people don't realize what property fraud is, but it is a growing trend in our community. And so in a sense, property fraud is someone impersonating a homeowner and trying to scam them out of money and to take large sums of money and then give a quitclaim deed to the buyer. And the buyer then files the quitclaim deed with the clerk's office, which in a sense transfers property.
So what does that mean? What does that mean to me as a property owner if I have not subscribed to this free alert system? What happens?
So in a sense, once the document is filed, it does transfer property. And so the property cycle kind of starts over, where the property appraiser will then value that property. And then when they send out the trim notice in the tax bill, it will now go to the new owner rather than the rightful owner that lives in the property. And so that's how a lot of people in our community determine that they've been a victim of the fraud, is that they need to pay their property taxes and they didn't get their bill. So they start calling someone in government, asking around, and someone on the other line of the phone says, "You're not the registered owner of the property," which prompts them to say, "What do you mean I'm not the registered owner?" And they give you a name that you're probably not going to recognize because they're the buyer in this situation. And so then your only remedy at that point is to have law enforcement investigate the crime or to file an action in front of the courts and prove yourself to be the rightful owner.
Seriously?
It has happened in our community. It's really hard to capture because they're impersonating you. And so when you go to law enforcement and say, "I've been a victim of this crime," they impersonated a signature and a pseudonym that is you. And so they're already in the win. They've already gotten their money, and they're already on to the next victim of their scheme. And so what this service does is it shortens the gap of time for when you're notified of the crime. And I've heard a lot about, hey, it's still too late. The service that we're going to talk about is a little delayed. It's after the crime has already been committed, but that's because the law exists that way. The law does not give the clerk's office the ability to reject a document. We're only there to make sure that the components of the document have met the legal requirements, not whether those requirements are right and legal. I don't have discretion, I guess is my point. And so I want to talk about this with our legislative delegation and see if we can get the law enhanced so we can prevent this fraud in a proactive sense. But right now, the best tool that my office has is a free property fraud alert service.
So you said an important word there, free. Is this service available in the private sector as well?
It is available in the private sector. Title lock is something that is heavily advertised in our area and around the nation, and it is a private option for consumers to do. But it's important to realize that they're using your local government's records and charging you at a premium. So if you choose to do that as a citizen, that is certainly your choice. But I say your taxpayer dollars have already paid for that service, and it's free, and you can trust me to do that job even better than a private company.
Okay, great. All right, so it's a free service. It alerts you of a potential crime. How do I sign up? What do I do, and how does it work?
So you can go to the clerk's website, www.leeclerk.org/property fraud, and there'll be a whole litany of information about it. But the service itself is very free, very easy to sign up for. It's 4 fields, John. It's your registered name, so the first name, the last name, and then your email address twice, just to make sure that you typed it in correctly. And you can do that for a variety of names. If you have a complex name, you can do a variety of spellings to make sure that you're covered. You also have the option to do properties in a trust or a business name, but it's still 4 fields. And so you can register your name, your spouse's names, your business names, all the same email address multiple times. And when a document is filed into the official record, which my office administers, you'll get an email within 24 hours advising you that the document was filed.
What if I have a really common name like John Smith?
Yep. Right now, how the system works, it is name driven. We are actively working on some enhancements to the system to make it property driven. So to answer your question, if you do have a more common name, you will get notifications of that property transaction, and we encourage you to call our office to verify the transaction. I hope to have it property driven within the next 2 to 3 months.
Well, that's an okay thing. I would much rather receive plenty of alerts that I don't need to worry about.
Yeah, and I'll give you my story. I was going through, I've registered for this service because I didn't know it was a serious problem. And I registered for the service and I got an alert. And I thought, oh my gosh, it's happening to me. But then when I looked into the transaction, it was actually my mortgage refinance being finished. So it does have other benefits. Rather than alerting you to a crime, it can let you know that your document has been processed and is now available on the clerk's website.
Okay. Can I register on behalf of someone else? Let's say that my parents lived here and I want to keep an eye on their records.
Absolutely, and that's exactly what we tell members of our community. If you don't have internet access or an email address, to find a trusted friend, family, or coworker to register on your behalf. And if you get that email notification, to pick up the phone and call them and ask them if they're aware of that transaction.
Can I tell if someone has signed up for the alert system using my name?
That's a good question. I don't believe so. I believe we have the ability to check if you've already registered. So if you weren't sure that if you've registered, we have the ability to double check that. I don't believe that feature is available to the public at large. I'd have to double check that.
Yeah, I appreciate if you look into that. So let's go back to the how we sign up. You know, people are watching this video and probably don't recall the website. So what specifically, where do they go and what do they do?
The Clerk of Court's website, www.leeclerk.org/property fraud. And you'll get to a page with 4 fields. It'll walk you through those 4 fields very easily. It should take you less than 5 minutes to register. You'll get an email confirmation when you actually do it. And then from there, hopefully you don't get a follow-up email. The whole point of the service is to alert you when there is a problem or when a document is filed. So if nothing happens, that's actually a good thing.
Great. I want to thank you for your time today.
Absolutely.
Anything else you want to say about the program?
What I want to say is that the Clerk and Comptroller's office takes property fraud very seriously. I want to champion some changes in the law in order to prevent this fraud from happening. We don't have the same composition as counties around us, so it's not as a big of a problem in our surrounding communities than it is in Lee County. And people work hard for their homes. You work for a very long time, you pay a lot of money for it, and you pay a lot of taxes for it. And so I'm committed to doing whatever we can to make sure that this crime doesn't happen to you. We have customers in our lobby at least 2 or 3 times a week asking us about property fraud, sometimes registering for the service, but oftentimes telling us that they've been a victim of the crime. And that's unfortunate. And so I find it as my obligation to do what we can to help combat this criminal fraud.
Well, thank you, NWNA members. You know, you probably heard that nothing is free. This is free. And there really is no reason not to take advantage of this. There is no risk whatsoever. In fact, it mitigates risk on your part. So please join me signing up for the program, and I hope to see you at our next membership meeting in November. Thank you.